Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Gaming Perspective podcast. Today we'll be talking about a wide range of topics from Hunt Showdown, Crackdown 3, Sony buying up studios, Remedy retaining the rights to Alan Wake, and much, much more. So if you have not gotten the opportunity to, don't forget you can check out the channel on Patreon at www.patreon.com/gamingperspective. You can support us over there, or if you just prefer to listen to us on free feeds, we appreciate all those that support us. So we're going to get right into cast introductions. As always, on my left, news editor for the Inner Circle Games Network, Mr. Samuel Tolbert.
Hey guys, how you doing? I hope you're doing well. Yeah, it's been a tiring couple of days. I've actually been taking a couple of days off writing, being perfectly honest, because my exhaustion after E3 just caught up with me and I had to do something for my sanity. But I am happy to be here and talk video game nonsense with y'all. So let's get this going.
Right on. And also joining me as well, Jared from the Inner Circle Games Network, a director of the affiliate program.
Well, how's it going there, boys? Let's get going. Let's pick apart. Let's get out of excited to talk about this. Let's get going.
Oh my God! Who invited?
Happy Canada Day, bud.
No, who invited the Newfoundlander on the podcast? I'm sorry.
Oh, don't you know?
Newfies are like, I don't know, like people from Florida in the United States.
They're worse. They're worse. Come on, they're way worse.
Like, you know how you see a
They
news
don't even
story?
talk straight.
You know how if you ever see a news story in the States and it's really screwed up, you're like, oh, that's got to be Florida. Yeah. That's what we do with Newfoundland. We're just like, oh, that's a Newfie thing.
Oh, yeah, that must be an East Coaster. East Coaster, Newfoundlander.
Jared, no. And also joining us from Florida, Mr. Eric Jackson. No, Eric?
He's
okay.
Like, yeah, no, I'm out.
I'm sorry, my headphone cut out for a second.
For a moment, dude, we thought you pulled a Costanza and just left after a high note.
It's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna quickly slide up the door here.
No, I'm sorry, I hit the cable on my headphone, and so it kind of went out for a sec there. I'm sorry. Where were we?
We're introducing you.
Oh, okay. I kind of figured that when I came back and it was like complete silence. So, sorry about that. What's going on, everybody? Good to be here.
Yeah, someone's excited. All right. So, as we talk about every week, what we have been playing, and we're going to start with Sam because this man hasn't been able to play video games all of June, basically.
Yeah, it's like between E3 prep, E3, and then coverage of E3, I've sort of been knocked out for most of the month, really. But I did finally get to play a couple of things. One of them is A Plague Tale: Innocence. I finally carved out a couple of days to just sit down, no interruptions, and just play it. I'm almost done. I'm like halfway through chapter 16, so I think I'm almost done with the game.
Nice.
As a result, I did that in like 2 or 3 sessions. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. It's been worth every penny so far of the $50 I spent on it. Like, seriously, this is not one to wait on a sale, guys. If you have not gotten it yet, get on it. It's currently trying to compete for my number 1 spot this year. Metro Exodus is still holding strong, but like Plague Tale has easily jumped to like an easy number 2, and it might go higher depending on how it ends. This has been phenomenal so far. By all means, please go play it. And then the other thing is that Mr. Jackson and I hooked up and we've been playing something together. We've been burning through Gears Ultimate Edition on hardcore because we've been doing a Gears run or trying to get a Gears run started in the lead up to Gears 5. And we've been talking about doing that for some time. And yeah, that's been a lot of fun so far. Mm-hmm. From our encounter with a berserker and recreating Harlem Nights, as he pointed out to me, to our moments of, now wait a minute, how'd this happen? We're both smart at this. Did you do that? No. Did you? No. But it's been good. It's been good reliving that. And I actually shamefully admit I had not gotten a chance to play the Ultimate Edition yet. I hadn't had the chance all these years. I bought it, I owned it, but I haven't had the chance to do it. So it's been nice going back and seeing the areas that were touched up and all that. I'm looking forward to seeing Gears 2 and 3 X-Enhanced for the first time when we get to those. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's been it for me. It's been nice to actually play a ton of stuff over the last couple of days.
Right on. Playing video games. What a concept. All right. And
Forget that's what it's all about at times.
what?
Yeah,
No, it's not. No, it's not. Just stop that nonsense. I don't need that. I don't need people thinking that. Jared, what have you been playing?
Do we really want to know what I've been playing? Because it's only kind of been one thing recently.
Sure.
And, all right. Well, I do have a review for it for those that are listening right now. If you want to check it out, you can go to techgamesnetwork.com and check out my review for The Sinking City, which I've done that recently. That's a pretty interesting game. So, like, if you like detective-based games, this one is actually an open world one too. So there's a lot of traveling around and lots of side cases and people to talk to and things to do. So that's not too bad. But it's an interesting H.P. Lovecraft-inspired detective game that is okay, I guess, to say it safely. Lots of technical issues with it and whatnot. And it was okay. The story is decent, but yeah, it wasn't a very enjoyable experience. So that's all I've really been playing.
Well, that's completely disheartening.
Yeah, especially after the 15 minutes that I played at E3, that's disappointing. Because I know it's a smaller team, but what they were trying to do seemed really ambitious.
Oh, definitely, it's very ambitious, and I like what they're aiming for. It's just like, if they could definitely have delayed it to polish it up a little bit more,
Okay,
and I think that could have helped out substantially.
You think this is a situation where if they had delayed it a few more months, to like maybe August or even like September, it would have come out a little bit better?
Yeah, I definitely think so for sure.
Makes sense. Eric, what have you been playing?
Yeah, I was kind of jumping around there for a while, after feeling a little bit of the burnout after Sekiro and Bloodborne runs earlier in the year. I had started on Bloodstained and decided to kind of put that down for a little bit, just while they still continue to patch it, because I've heard like later in the game you can run into some things. But what I played was really good. The game's a lot of fun, like Eagles all over it. Definitely has that nostalgic feel. In and out, I'm also jumping in and out of my friend Pedro. That game's completely nuts and bananas, like they say. So, but then I found my way over to Shadow of War, Middle-earth Shadow of War, and it just clicked. It feels like the kind of game I need after playing something like Sekiro.
Yeah.
Not overly frustrating. Kind of ticks those boxes of searching the world and finding different things, or whatever the case may be. My only complaint, and it's kind of like from the first game too, is you run around one corner, you run into an Orkai, who you're gonna challenge, and he has to go through his monologue, but you can't really skip past his monologue.
yeah. Especially if it's a guy you've run into before.
Right.
And you're like, oh my god, here we go again.
Right. And then I'm early in the game, so Sam probably remembers this, and I can't remember the region, Sam, forgive me, but
it's okay.
This it's like they're everywhere. You have Orkai everywhere, right? So you're fighting one, that you kind of challenge or whatever, and the fight is carrying across, the courtyard, and then you turn a corner, and then it triggers another one that's sort of coming after you. So you're in the middle of one fight, and then you're going through his monologue too, and you're like, Jesus Christ, guys. But outside of that, no, I absolutely love these games. They're fantastic. So yeah, that's pretty much where I've been with that. However, I am gonna pause it a little bit and go back and forth. I've just been hearing too much about A Plague Tale, so I just downloaded it last night.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna start it Wednesday. I think Wednesday night, because I'm off on Thursday and Friday. So yeah, I'm just gonna have a long weekend and jump into that.
And the great thing about Plague Tale is that's not long. Like that's
Right.
not going to really interrupt Shadow of War. It's not like you're taking on Persona 5 at the same time or anything crazy like that.
Right. So yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at, man. That's what I've been playing.
Cool.
Right on. And I myself have been playing NBA 2K18 still because I hate myself. There's no way around that. I've been playing Stardew Valley on my Vita. I finished My Friend Pedro, which the review is out on TechGamesNetwork.com. You can check that out. I'm going to be starting Judgment this week. I was hoping to get started sooner, but been kind of sidetracked by other things and working on a lot of stuff right now. So starting Judgment this week, and I'm going to dive into some of the games I'm picking up on Steam this week. I'm picking up Sid Meier's Pirates and Age of Mythology because I love early 2000s PC games. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting with playing stuff. Just a little bit of everything. Keep it kind of light right now. Really, really just counting down the days until Wolfenstein Youngblood, if I'm being completely honest with myself.
Nice.
It's like 3.5 weeks. So
yeah,
pumped.
it's not long. It's not long. Did you read my preview of Cyberpilot? I presume you did?
Yes. Yes. If it involves squishing Nazis, I'm in. How can he say something so controversial?
Jared, Eric, I don't know if you guys read my preview for a Wolfenstein Cyberpilot, but actually towards the end of the demo, there's this great line where you're like, your mission control says, you really can't debate a Nazi, but you sure can pulverize them. I'm like, this puts a smile on my face.
That's great.
I don't know. People yelling debate me in my threads is now like it's my new kink. I just like look at my Twitter. I'm like, yeah, that's the good stuff. All right, so we're gonna hop right down into the news. There's been a bunch of smaller stuff. There's been some confusing stuff, so we're going to dive right through all of it. So first things first is Hunt the Showdown, which people will know from Crytek, originally launched on Steam Early Access back in February 2018. Xbox Game Preview in May 29th, 2019. It will be launching officially on August 20th, 2019. Out of Game Preview / Early Access, it'll be launching for $39.99 US on Xbox One and PC. PlayStation owners need not worry, as the PlayStation version of the game will be launching later this fall. There'll be more information on PlayStation version down the road when they have more concrete information. So has anyone had a chance to play Hunt Showdown? Or
I played one match today from a free 2-hour trial, which you can use right now if you really wanted to. Seems interesting. I had no clue what I was doing.
That is
There's no tutorial, nothing.
That's a very interesting multiplayer game. I've played about 50 hours of the PC version. I wrote a preview / review of it back when it came to early access on PC. It's asymmetrical multiplayer, very dark, Southern Gothic type atmosphere. I really enjoyed it at the time. I mean, like I said, I put about 50 hours into it. I'll hop on it on console. I just need to know what the price is and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 40.
I'm quite curious.
It's $40 at launch. And yeah, it looks interesting. I'm gonna probably wait on it. Maybe give it a week or two after it launches out of early access, because I feel like it's gonna be super janky, because I know it was pretty demanding on PC.
Yeah, it's a pretty harsh game just on PC. I'm actually curious how they even got it to run on console, honestly.
It doesn't look the greatest, but it doesn't look the worst. That's for sure on the One X.
I mean, like, can anything really look worse than PUBG early access?
Oh, it looks way
Ark
better
Survival
than that.
Evolved on Switch.
Oh, I'm definitely way better than that.
Okay, Ark Survival Evolved on Switch is basically like you tried to put Doom 2016 on a Nintendo 64.
It still might run it better than the Switch.
It's probably will. Speaking of the Nintendo Switch, here's a game that'll run well on Nintendo Switch. What Remains of Edith Finch, which was a sleeper hit of 2017 and has been revered by many as one of the best indie games of this generation, developed by Giant Sparrow, whose previous game, Unfinished Swan, launched in 2012. We learned earlier this week that What Remains of Edith Finch will be coming to Nintendo Switch on July 4th. And as many people know, What Remains of Edith Finch is one of my favorite games of this generation. I cannot recommend it more. Is anyone going to pick up the Switch version?
Yeah, I'm good.
I probably won't. Only because I have it on 2 platforms already. So.
Oh my god.
Yeah, got it on Xbox. I'm good.
These Switcher guys, I swear. We'll buy Witcher 3 on Switch, but we won't support the good indie games. All right.
Okay, I've got a
Ooh.
horrible thing to admit. I actually have yet to play What Remains of Edith Finch, but when I do play it, and I do plan to, it'll probably be on my Xbox.
Nick throwing shade at the Switch crew. I'll say this, Nick. I have really no interest in playing The Witcher on Switch when I have the better version on console. I'm just saying, if they had the collection as a collector, I was interested in, but I'm not paying $60 for the collection.
My favorite thing is that people, if they get mad at me and they're like on Nintendo Switch, if they're really mad at me, they have to fight through the input lag to leave me nasty comments on the YouTube app from their Nintendo Switch. No, it's cool that it's getting a great indie game. This would be a game that will run well on Switch.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those games that kind of makes sense. It's cool. It's great that it's going to be on more platforms. Hopefully it gets that. I'm going to patent this right now, the Nintendo Switch Boost, which is any game that's an indie game on Nintendo Switch instantly sells 10 times better for no reason at all. Because apparently if you can take it on the go anywhere, it automatically makes it the best place to buy it.
Yeah, but it's funny. Like if you only have a Switch, then definitely go for that. It doesn't, and maybe if you're going on a long ride or a trip or something, that's a perfect game for that. But I mean, it's a game that you're kind of like you're really paying attention to. So I can't imagine if you're somewhere where there's like a lot of background noise or.
That's the thing. Like Eric, I've
whatever,
heard. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that's a game where it's ideal to just finish it in one sitting.
Yeah. Yes. That's why I said if you're going on a long plane ride and it's fairly you have headphones on and you can just kind of immerse yourself, you can get through it in a few hours. So
yeah, but the thing is for me with What Remains of Edith Finch, it's like I'm not going to play it in public because I'm not going to publicly cry on public transportation while playing the video game.
You're not going to weep in public?
Shit. No, what the hell? No.
What's wrong with that guy?
Someone's cutting onions on the train here. What the hell?
I'm just thinking about what the Vita. It deserved better. So, Crackdown 3. Something I never thought I'd have to mention in a podcast after the first month this game launched.
No, right? I thought we were done.
It's like, at last, after all these years, the Crackdown talk is over, and then it's pulling a Mushu from Mulan. I live!
Yeah. Like,
so,
guess what?
Crackdown 3 is getting something new for players to use. Wingsuits are now available for players to enjoy. The Flying High update, which is not sponsored by Snoop Double D, bring new gadgets and achievements for players to earn. So there's achievements, everything else. Great. As Sam pointed out in our DMs, Crackdown 3 now officially has more updates and patches than Anthem.
Yeah. Poor Anthem.
Anthem is the redheaded stepchild of the video game industry at this point.
I don't want to talk about it.
I can imagine.
Man, don't worry, Jared.
I'm passing over this one.
Jared's like, can we just skip this conversation topic?
It's a trap for me, man. I can't go into this one. No way.
I will say this. It's great that Crackdown 3 is still getting support. It's great that they're still giving it post-launch support, especially in the single-player end of things.
Yeah.
It's always cool to see developers support their single-player games post-launch with new content, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really cool for that. I hope Microsoft does that with all their games going forward. An example, Outer Worlds, things like that. All those games that they're launching through Xbox Game Studios, I hope they all get this kind of post-launch support. Because it's, if I'm being honest, it's really, really cool. Like the same thing with like State of Decay 2 getting a cinematic style story campaign patched in as DLC.
Who saw that coming? Like, I'm not complaining at all, but I thought they would have moved on. Seriously. That was a big surprise.
Yeah, and I like those post-launch supports. The one thing that absolutely agitates me, and it's the most minute thing, and it's something I love that PlayStation does, that Xbox doesn't, is separating the DLC from the main game. If I 100% complete all the achievements on an Xbox game and then they add DLC, it's like, oh, you have 1,000 out of 1,250 now. And I'm like, whereas PlayStation, you get the platinum and then all the other ones have separate trophy lists and it's just kept separate and it satisfies my OCD. Mm-hmm. But I wish they would separate those because I look at Crackdown 3, which I was only like 2 achievements off from. And they're like, there's now 2,000 gamer score. And I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. So this wingsuit, you can go get your agility orbs a lot easier, I'd imagine now. So yeah, pretty cool update. Wait and see what else they've got cooking.
You going back in, Nick?
No.
But you know what? No, I kind of agree. Just to give my quick 2 cents, it's cool that they're still doing it for fans. Like, yes, kudos. I appreciate that. That is nice for you to do. Like the fact that after they've waited all this time, they're going to have more and more stuff to do and earn.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I really appreciate that they're doing all this extra work for the 10 people that are still playing Crackdown 3. Sam just rolled his eyes like a different atmosphere.
Actually, I sighed, but like tried to keep it quiet so it didn't go into my mic, and I cracked my neck to the left at the same time. But good guess.
That was
still pushing for Game of the Year.
Oh my god. No, please don't. I'm gonna laugh if it ends up in like best action game or something. I'm just gonna incessantly giggle. Like, I want Jeff Keighley just to put it in there just to make people angry.
The Crackdown stand.
No, in all seriousness though, like as Sam said, post-launch support is awesome.
Yeah, there's never anything wrong with that.
Yeah, like there's more games I wish could have gotten that.
God of War.
Yeah.
If there's a game where I'd be like, I'd pay full price for post-launch DLC, it was that one.
We went on vacation in Niflheim.
Like, guys, you saw that tweet I shared speaking of Niflheim, where someone was like, finally Sony Santa Monica finally got that Niflheim trophy. It took me way too long. I'm so angry. And they're like, we understand.
All right, so we're going to move right along to the polar opposite of games from Crackdown 3. We're going to talk about Last of Us Part 2. So there's a rumor circulating that Last of Us Part 2 would not have multiplayer. And what sparked this rumor was someone posted a picture of the Days of Play PS4, which was that custom silver PS4. They looked at the fine print on the box, saw a disclaimer that Days Gone, God of War, Marvel Spider-Man, The Last of Us Part 2 do not support online multiplayer. Was in the fine print. And of course, instead of anyone doing any background reading or anything else, everyone immediately went, oh my god, they must have canceled the multiplayer. So a few sites got a little happy and wrote 5 or 6 articles saying Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer is in trouble. Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer doesn't exist. Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer canceled. When, in fact, there was several things that have pointed to the opposite. For example, the head director, one of their key directors, Anthony Newman, who is the game's co-director, made very clear in an interview with Polygon in E3 2018 that there will be multiplayer with the game, and they're excited to share details about it, but that's going to be at a later date. And of course, people went, well, a lot can change within a year. But if anyone did any sort of form of research, you go to Naughty Dog's job Twitter and open positions in June 2019. They have multiplayer server programmers and multiplayer gameplay programmers on the game team specifically for The Last of Us Part 2. Which means that as of June 2019, they were still hiring for the multiplayer portion of The Last of Us Part 2. So, the question I pose to you guys is, do you guys think that The Last of Us Part 2 is going to have multiplayer? And the follow-up question to that is, do you think that people need to be more careful with what they run with and take everything with a grain of salt more? and not just with Sony, but anything else.
Yes,
So
and yes.
We'll start with Sam.
I think it's definitely still has multiplayer. This reads to me like the 95% chance is that this is a misprint, and that they were wrong, and that it was handled by someone who misunderstood and they didn't think it all the way through. The 5% remaining chance is that the multiplayer is shipping after the fact, sort of like Red Dead, where the single player game comes out and then maybe there's a small chance the multiplayer then comes out a couple of months afterwards. There is a 0% chance that game won't have multiplayer. Are you kidding? After the microtransaction pay-to-win weapons that were in that and then Uncharted 4, like, no, it'll have microtransactions and it'll have multiplayer.
And it's still a very sought-after multiplayer, like, even now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, people
definitely.
maybe not Uncharted 4, but people still do talk about The Last of Us multiplayer.
No, I meant
So,
the Last of Us.
Yeah, like that one people still talk about. So, like,
Some people still
it has
play
a
it, too.
smaller but dedicated following. So yeah, all those reasons above, and then what you said, Nick, about actually looking and seeing, oh yeah, the director said this, and oh yeah, they're still hiring for network programmers to work on that. Like, it'll be in there one way or another.
Yeah. No, yeah, Jared. People still play The Last of Us multiplayer.
Yeah,
Still,
exactly.
You can still get games in there, and people still play Uncharted 4. Oddly enough, I should say oddly enough. I mean, there are dedicated fans who like it. They like the way it plays.
Yeah, if there's a dedicated fan base that still plays it, I don't see a reason why they shouldn't continue on with it in the second game.
They're gonna get wingsuits. In Uncharted 4 multiplayer soon. Watch.
Well, look, I'm gonna say this though, is like there was no way that Naughty Dog didn't put in multiplayer in this, because one of the few things that Naughty Dog has gotten credit for is the fact that their multiplayer aspects have been very, very good. I'm not going to say on the same level as their single player storytelling, because their single player storytelling is like god tier for most people. So like their multiplayer ability is pretty great, because like in terms of PlayStation first party studios that are outputting multiplayer experiences, The Last of Us still holds up to this day, which is very impressive because it's a multiplayer game from 2013 when you think about it. So really cool. And I definitely don't think that there's any way this game, like, it'd be one thing if they launch it and do it like, as Sam said, with the Red Dead online kind of style of it's coming later, but we want to give you the game first. I think that'll still upset some people, even if they did that. But I think they'll definitely wait. I don't think they're in any rush to get The Last of Us Part 2 out the door. I think they're going to take their time and launch it all together, and multiplayer will be in there, and then all these people that wrote articles going, we have inside sources, look like idiots. And let me tell you, that's not exclusive information. So we're going to move right along, keep you on the PlayStation train. Next generation PlayStation console. Everyone's favorite thing to talk about. PlayStation 5.
Oh,
God, I if they don't call it PlayStation 5, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life.
They will. They've been consistent with that. Their naming. Yeah.
So there was a report in Wall Street Journal, and this was a big report. There was a lot of things, as a lot of people have seen. Different sites have taken different pieces of that report and used it for different reactions, so to speak. You can look at from the perspective that PlayStation doesn't have any interest in indie developers. You can look at from the fact that Sony really values how their first party studios and everything else. So we're going to kind of tackle this piece by piece. So analysts are projecting that PlayStation will land somewhere in fall 2020, no doubt to coincide with Xbox's next generation launch. And they want to have a major focus delivering big budget games, whether from first party studios such as God of War, Days Gone, or from third party studios such as Marvel Spider-Man with Insomniac Games. Sony believes that people buying video game consoles buy them for graphics heavy experiences. Not really going to disagree with any of that. Now, the first interesting thing where we can kind of talk about things is in terms of who Sony views as their major competition. They still say that Microsoft remains to be PlayStation's main focus point of competition. No doubt with Xbox's recent Game Pass subscription service and massive studio acquisition binge, they're certainly on Sony's radar. However, PlayStation doesn't consider Nintendo to be a major rival because they believe that Nintendo focuses on a different demographic than PlayStation.
Mm.
Yeah, I could see it.
So PlayStation's saying that Nintendo games are kiddie games and that people on PlayStation don't like kiddie games.
I think that's a bad take.
Yeah, I mean, I know.
I get it, but
it's
yeah.
tough. It's tough because it's like, I get it. There has been evidence that people who purchase a Switch are more likely to own a Switch and another console than just a Switch. But at the same time, evidence also shows that cross-console ownership has never been higher. In other words, by which I mean, this is the most in all of history of video gaming that people have ever owned 2 or all 3 consoles. Like, it's more common now than it was in the generation before this or the generation before that. It's much more common now. And possibly because the target demographic has gotten older. I think that's one likely scenario. But that comment, like, I'm trying to not use a certain word, but it definitely reads an interesting way to me. We'll see. It's interesting.
I think conversely, though, it's interesting that that they took that stance where Nintendo's concerned, because Nintendo has long said that they don't see they don't see Microsoft or Sony as like competition. They feel like they're kind of off in their own world doing like their own little thing.
True, they have.
They have. So
and will fail or succeed based on what they do, not on what others do. And it's possible. We'll see. I thought their comments about indie devs, or the comments about indie developers and targeting bigger publishers and bigger games versus smaller ones was interesting. It lines up with what Sean Layden said a few months ago in his interview with Game Informer about how they want to focus on making less games at Sony Worldwide Studios, but they want to focus on making bigger games. To which basically I say, okay, you've got something going. Good luck. Like, I see what you're doing. You definitely have to be careful because it increases the pain of failure if there is a slip up. By any means, like if one of them doesn't deliver, it's more obvious. Does that make any sense?
Well, it's going to take longer for them to recover with a sequel or something, right?
Right, but at the same time, it's a good thing to strive for. Like, I totally get what you're going for, especially after God of War. So high risk, high reward.
Yes.
We'll see.
Yes,
we'll see how it goes. That's basically my opinion.
If he can pull it off, by all means, all power to him. If it can really show an improvement in the quality of the games by taking that much more, a little bit more of time, by all means, please do it, because the fans will understand, the fans will wait, and the fans will still give you their money. And in fact, they'll actually probably end up being more willingly to give you that money to play and buy that game. So if you set the standard to where all of a sudden your games can't be outpaced no matter what, people are going to have to follow suit just to try and beat them.
Mm-hmm. And it's possible. I mean, they might have other titles, sprinkled in there too. Like, you want to take your time on your bigger IPs, your big like marquee tentpole games, and then you have like your other titles in there, like your Concrete Genies and your Medievals and things like that. That kind of
But will we actually see more of those if they focus more on these bigger games? Like, will we actually see more of the smaller indie titles or the lesser known games still be pushed forward in the next gen?
I think so. Personally, I think so. Especially depending on how it shakes out with, some of the acquisitions that people are rumored, to hear from them. Like they're planning on ramping up a few acquisitions or whatever. So we'll see how that all shakes out over the next couple of years or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So I just kind of honestly do feel like we're in no man's land still in terms of where these companies are going and what they're trying to do.
I mean, they're all doing very different things.
We're in uncharted territory, so
they're all doing very different things. I think I could be wrong about this. I don't think we're going to see many smaller games from Sony. I think like the current slate is the ones you're going to get, and I think it'll be more uncommon from there on out. But we'll see. That's just what I'm reading in terms of their approach when you look at the games that they've had success with versus the games they haven't had success with. and the games that have gotten them a lot of recognition versus the ones that haven't. There's a clear pattern. There's a very clear pattern. It makes sense to me that they're doubling down on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to throw this out there too, is this was a really bad quote that was used in this article, where the way it was translated or transcribed across, and this may not have been the person's intention, is that in this Wall Street Journal report, they made it sound like the Sony rep that they were talking to basically said something along the lines of, well, smaller developers realize we're too big of a platform to ignore, so we don't have to cater to them. Which is a bit of a yikes, considering PlayStation 4 launched and relied heavily on indie developers early on. And one of the big key pitches of the platform was their support of smaller developers such as House Marquee and developers along those lines. But now they are saying, well, we like the AAA Hollywood budget experiences, so the smaller developers are going to put games on our platform whether we chase them or not. Which, while true, is not necessarily a stance that a lot of developers are going to be too keen on. And a lot of developers have been openly speaking out about that particular quote and saying, yeah, this is where we're at with this. House Marquee's been quite openly blatant that they don't have the support from Sony that they did back in, say, the Resogun era and things like that. They've kind of lost their support when they decide to go multi-plat. So it's just kind of interesting. It's an interesting stance to take. I understand big AAA games sell your hardware, but I also think that the smaller games are really important. And the whole thing of we don't think Nintendo competes with us because they compete for a different demographic. I miss the Sony that had everything. And this may just be me being nostalgic and everything else, but what I loved about the PS2 and the PS3 era is they had great multiplayer games, they had great single-player games, and they had great fun games. Like things like Sly Cooper and SOCOM for multiplayer and Little Big Planet. And not everything had to be a serious third-person action game. And that's kind of the rut I'm in with Sony first party is they do really great third-person action games. But don't be scared to break out of that mold and do something different. Because it was even stated in the Wall Street Journal report is that there was concern amongst, and keep in mind, this is investors. Investors get cold feet if a cool breeze goes through a window. Is that there was lack of diversity in Sony's portfolio in terms of the variety of titles they bring.
I mean, the investors can cry about lack of diversity, but at the same time, they should focus on what works.
And that's the thing is, like, can you really, after the success of God of War, after Days Gone selling on Sony's worldwide studios caliber alone, it speaks volumes for what their games can do. But eventually people are going to want to see more than that. And I think highlighting games like Dreams and Concrete Genie and everything else makes people realize you're a really balanced company. And, like, public image is everything with these guys. Like, that's why I've always, like, when people in 2015 or 2014 were dumping on indie games because, like, PlayStation was relying heavily on indie games early on. They're like, oh, it's just indie crap. And I'm like, no, this is great stuff. It's the same thing. It's like the ID at Xbox program and the Xbox, anyone who remembers from the Xbox 360 or the Xbox 360, like, live arcade, some of the best games were in those libraries.
Oh, they're fantastic.
And part of any great catalog is both the big games and the small games. And I just hope that they don't lose that focus.
No, and I hope they don't as well, because I think a game that was really good for them was Ratchet and Clank.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you want to see something like that again.
Good mid-size.
Say what you will about it. I know we goof on it, but, you know, putting Knack 1 and then having the ball to do Knack 2, whatever Sony's got going there, you still, whether people truly love it, I mean, it does have its fans, you still want to have that kind of mix of game in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, maybe it's not another Knack, but it's something on that level. So again, we'll see how that shakes out. But I mean, and then conversely, you have Microsoft kind of going through the same thing. People are like, where's your diversity?
Yeah, it's
You
in the
know?
diverse. It's not in the diverse. Sorry, Eric. It's like it's in the reverse. For
Right.
Sony, for where Sony is on smaller, more experimental games, Microsoft is on bigger games. And for both of them, I think what it comes down to, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but where you're going with this is, we don't want you to change your focus on everything. We just want you to prove you can do one or two.
Right. Right.
That's all we're saying here.
Yep. And that's why I said the next couple of years, the next few years are going to be really interesting from like both of them. Again, while Nintendo's over there like that
chugging away.
It's
a me.
So and I think what people want from them is, I don't know if people want from them because they're like an indie darling right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they're on fire. They're on fire. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they're like, hey, I kind of hold off and I buy most of my indies over, on the Switch because of the portability thing. It just kind of fits. It kind of makes sense, for me, whatever. And in some cases, it's not major, but they're garnering some forms of third-party support. I still think they need to like really, sit down and go on some dates with some of these developers and say, hey, remember those times when you guys would kind of make something special for like what our little system does? Hey, maybe we throw a few bucks your way and do that. And I don't think it's the same type of thing of keeping something off of another system or whatever the case may be. But if you do something that inherently works for the Switch, it's sort of seen differently.
Like something like Mario versus Rabbids and things like that, using third parties to do something special with your IPs.
Yeah, like you see what's going on with the Necrodancer game, like with the Zelda content.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Something that kind of says Nintendo, but you kind of you marry the worlds together.
Yeah, and Nintendo's kind of been more open to letting indie developers handle their IPs. With what was it, Legends of Hyrule? Is that the game?
Yeah,
that just came out on Switch. That's indie developed, but also licensed. It's interesting. Nintendo Switch is doing some really interesting things, but all three of these companies are doing really off-the-ball things that if you had asked me in 2013, 2014, if they would be doing that, I would never have predicted the trajectory that we're on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which is exciting. It's good.
Yep.
Yeah, and like, I don't know. I'm all in on all this, and I'm interested to see where it will go.
Mm-hmm.
And like, my criticisms for Microsoft and Sony are pretty much the same. I want a in-depth single-player RPG from Microsoft, and with PlayStation, I want them to make a meaningful attempt at a multiplayer game. I don't think it's going to be that Predator game. But for the love of God, if Guerrilla is really truly making a multiplayer-focused game with the one of the head developers from Rainbow Six Siege, that's got a lot of potential right there, and that has me really excited. Whether it's a SOCOM game or a spiritual successor to SOCOM, something.
I mean, and Sony fans there's like two things I consistently hear Sony fans or people who own the Sony platform who remember certain things are asking for, and Microsoft does catch some hell for people feeling like things fall on deaf ears with them, but on the Sony side of things, people have been asking for a SOCOM, and you do hear the rumblings of people asking for another The Order.
Yeah. And the thing about the SOCOM in particular is we've talked about The Order before. SOCOM just got a bad deal because the developers, that wasn't their fault. What happened with that hack and the timing of that game just being, forget bomb. It was butchered and eaten alive because of the hack, and like no one could play it, no one cared. That's not their fault, and that's a shame. So it definitely does feel like, okay, maybe it's too late for that particular team, but give the IP itself one more chance.
Yeah. And I kind of feel that maybe it will happen.
Maybe. Maybe. It's definitely a question of finding, who to do it.
Right.
That's the question more than anything else.
For sure. And speaking of IPs in transition, we got a little bit of a doozy today. Remedy, which everyone knows is Sam's favorite developer, has obtained the publishing rights for Alan Wake from Microsoft. So Alan Wake originally released on Xbox 360 all the way back on May 14th, 2010. The game was critically successful, achieving 83 on Metacritic and sold 4.5 million copies as of 2015. Unfortunately, this was not enough success for Microsoft to invest in a sequel, so the IP lay dormant as Remedy owned the rights to the IP. However, they did not have the publishing rights for the game. Now, however, Microsoft has relinquished the rights back to Remedy, and we don't have any real details on how much money it exchanged hands. Was it given back? Was it... The wording is odd. I believe the official wording is reverted was in the initial report. In the initial report is that the rights for survival horror game Alan Wake has reverted back to developer Remedy. So it makes it sound like Microsoft didn't renew the rights or something along those lines. We'll probably find out more in a couple of days, but the possibility for an Alan Wake sequel or even just a remaster at this point, I think, is exponentially higher than it's ever been. How about you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Totally agree.
Whatever it takes. Whatever.
Yeah, right? Whatever it takes.
Dude, look, this is my time. This is my hour of power, okay? Whatever it takes. I don't care what form it has to take. Give me my Alan Wake 2. That's give me an I'll take a remaster, but I can still play the first game on Steam and, Xbox through back compat. So, it's definitely... There's two different conversations going on Twitter right now. I really don't want to touch one of them because I think there's a lot of hyperbole going on. So all I'm going to say is there's a very clear reason why they got the publishing rights for that back, but it's not like Microsoft gave them the Quantum Break IP, which they owned in entirety. This is clearly in my opinion, a good faith move of, look, here's the publishing rights. You already own the IP. So go ahead and have it, and a little mutual trust, whatever. And I would expect to see a multi-platform remaster of Alan Wake be the next game from them after Control, maybe sometime early next year, something like that. That's what I would expect, and I'm all for it. Heck yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's good to see Remedy get control of it again. Still don't know how in the hell, what kind of sales metrics where 4.5 million isn't justified enough for a sequel. Especially with some of the sequels we've seen this generation. Basically my mentality's always been, if Knack can get a sequel, then anything deserves a damn sequel. But of course, as Sam always points out to me, that's Mark Cerny's love child. So PlayStation's like, well, if we want Cerny to make PS5, I guess we better let him make another Knack game.
I mean, you could say like Knack, but you also look at Gravity Rush.
True.
Yep.
They went back, to the well on that again. Took the shot. Even I don't think the sales were tremendous on Gravity Rush in general. I think it was better on Vita.
I think if I remember correctly, now I'm not going to pretend to be a longtime fan or anything. I haven't played them, but if I remember correctly, the first game sold okay, and then the second one just didn't sell at all, is what I heard. I don't know. I'm actually going to look it up right now.
Right, but it has a fan following, and sometimes you do that. You say, hey, you know what? Let's see what happens on the second one, and then sometimes
give it a shot. Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
You never know. And
it's like, I'm not asking for Alan Wake the series, Alan Wake spin-offs, and Alan Wake Part 3, 4, 5. It's like, just give me my sequel, please.
Right.
Give me one more. Give me one more, and I'll shut up. And the chances for that are now slightly higher. So heck yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's loud enough, it was loud enough for Microsoft to actually listen. Now I get, Sunset Overdrive. I know people there is a strong group of people who want that, but I can understand them kind of saying, yeah, guys, you know what? We hear like the few of you screaming, but the majority of you spoke.
Yeah,
we gave it away, and you didn't take it.
Alan Wake was more successful because Alan Wake did get one spin-off and it got 2 DLCs.
Right.
That's one thing. Like, Alan Wake was more successful and it sold better. And then B, on top of that, Remedy is still here. And while they do have a team working on that timed exclusive Xbox game, Crossfire X, yeah, that's coming from part of Remedy. Most of them are going to be done when Control comes out. So it's a bit of a different situation. Insomniac has their hands full in Spoderman, and they're going to be invested in Spoderman for some time to come. Not really the same thing, Right. So it's like, if we give them the rights back, they're just going to be the ones sitting on it instead of us.
Yeah, and then you
Yeah.
look at something like Rise. I know it has a very vocal audience who would like to see another one, but they're like, that's in some kind of game limbo hell. So who knows what's going on?
You know the story on Rise, though, right, man?
Yeah.
Microsoft did try. They
Right.
actually did try. They were like, "Hey, Crytek, you're in financial trouble. Let's make Rise 2." Crytek was like, "Nah." It's like,
Yeah.
okay, we'll buy the game from you since we hold the publishing rights. We'll buy it. We'll find a dev to make it. Nah. So I don't know. That one just
that's what I
sucks.
say. It's in some weird like.
Unfortunately, there's
hell
less
of,
of a chance for something to happen there than there is for Sunset, and that really
Right.
sucks.
Well, as Crytek's proven on a regular basis, they'd rather hemorrhage money than make money. So
I don't know. If I'm in charge of a studio, I think I'm going to do whatever it takes to actually pay my developers on time. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Personally.
You guys remember, like, for a few E3s there, the pitch on Alan Wake was almost on a Splinter Cell like rumbling. Like, people kept saying, "Is it going to be Alan Wake?" And it's even like at this E3, people were thinking with the Blair Witch games, like, "Is it Alan Wake?" It's like Microsoft.
People want an Alan Wake.
Yeah, if you really want to shed this, like, start shedding the whole meme that you don't listen when it comes to sequels, throw that bone in there. Or I mean, that's
right.
Or not, obviously, as of today, that's not the case. But prior to today, it was like, you really want to start shedding that? Answer the call.
Dude, you've heard me on Tick Podcast. I've said for a while, if you want to see a grown man, or someone who's pretending to be a grown man, and journalists anyways, get up and scream and holler, then, okay, well, you can bring Keanu Reeves, and I'll do it then. but before that, prior to that, start playing that theme song from Alan Wake. Have Poets of the Fall do a haunting musical solo, and then have Sam Lake come out on stage. Yeah, but you know what? It's like, I think there's another conversation here that we don't really have time for. But if they couldn't do it themselves right now, then I will give Microsoft props for saying, "Okay, here you guys go. You can have this back now. Do with it what you will." That's a step. We'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, I'll be definitely interested to see what if anything comes from this, or what the situation will be, and it all will focus along how Control's launch does, and we'll see.
There's definitely, I know they're going to have some support from being the ones doing the story for Crossfire X, but a lot is riding on Control. No question about that.
Yeah, definitely, and it'll be interesting to see how things are going to shape up in terms of that. Now, for our final discussion topic, there's been reports, and it's been going around the internet from Jim Ryan. I don't think Sean Layden said anything. I know Sean Layden did comment on this, about that PlayStation will be focusing on acquisitions in the forms of studios in the upcoming time. And keyword is time. They didn't specify in the next few months, next few years. They just said it's something they're looking at. So we're going to put on our proverbial Monday morning football armchair best and try to pick what we think would be the best studios for Sony to pick up in terms of diversity in catalog, what would be great for them, what would be great for the studio, et cetera, et cetera. There's only one studio I'm removing from this, and that is Insomniac Games.
Because it's too obvious, it's too easy, and it's not going to happen.
Well, it's not even that. It's so redundant. Why would Insomniac want to sell when Sony literally forks over money whenever they want to make something? I don't know a single developer that'll sell their freedom for money that they already have. So, and the fact that I think Insomniac's turned down Sony like 3 or 4 times, I think that's more telling than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think Insomniac will keep making PlayStation IPs until the studio goes on forever. Because that's certainly what they seem to do, but I don't see any reason why they would fork out the cash or make Sony fork out the cash other than to get big payday, which they don't need with the success of Spider-Man. So eliminating Insomniac off so that people can have a little bit more diversity in their picks, because everyone wants Insomniac. Like, come on. I just want another Resistance game. So we're going to go down the line. We're each going to have two, but we're going to list off the first one on our list as we go down the line. So kicking us off will be Sam.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Okay, so mine is going to be... Wow, who paid you for us to shill like this? This is ridiculous. I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding. I think in Ilphonic. Ilphonic makes a lot of sense because Ilphonic, for people who don't know, are a small developer. They're a multiplayer-based team, and they're the ones who made the Friday the 13th game, and they're the ones making this upcoming Predator game that Sony is making alongside Fox Games. And it makes a lot of sense because it's multiplayer, which is something that Sony seriously lacks, but it's an odd spin on multiplayer. It's not a shooter, it's not a team objective or stuff like that. It's a different spin on multiplayer, asymmetrical, that sort of thing. It's a smaller investment. I think they would make a lot of sense, and they would give that kind of small game, but also multiplayer diversity, sort of a 2-for-1 that people are looking for.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Eric.
I'm gonna hit it on the nose. Honestly, I would say Remedy.
Okay, go on.
And I would honestly say if you kind of look at again, maybe this is too on the nose, but when we talked about earlier that convoluted content release schedule that kind of favored the PlayStation. When I saw that, I kind of just looked at it like, to me, it seems in simple terms, they kind of look at the types of games PlayStation gamers kind of focus on, and Control to them kind of seems like that type of game. So I think, honestly, for the types of games that Sony likes to create, that might not be a bad match.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, I know, like I said, it's very on the nose. It seems very obvious. It just seems like,
it's actually not as obvious because it was actually brought out after that content release roadmap. That was 505 Studios, the publisher for Control, pitching that, and Remedy was actually against locking off platform content.
Right.
But since 505 gets control of it, that's where it ended up. So that was kind of a whole ugly situation that they didn't want to get into. But unfortunately, when you're a smaller single-player game, you're trying to strike out on your own, definitely giving the favored PlayStation was definitely, I think, going to be a smart move for 505. I'm hoping that'll pay off for them. I definitely think Remedy would fit the bill of what PlayStation looks for in a studio, but I don't necessarily think it gives them the diversity they're looking for in their library.
No, you put that into words for me, Eric. It's not that they don't fit; they definitely fit the type of culture. It's that I was looking at it from more of a diversity standpoint instead of more of the same, if that makes any sense.
Though I have to agree with Eric, though, it'd be cool to see Remedy operating on a Sony first-party budget, though.
Yeah, that's kind of why I said it is on the nose, but I don't want to say that like they're struggling, because I don't think that's the case with them, but I definitely think they're looking to definitely garner like a bigger audience and move into a different stratosphere. And they're too talented not to. And I like Nick is saying, I kind of think, for an audience and for the kind of support that they would get, because again, Sony's not going to, they're very careful with how they foster some of these things. And again, I guess we can kind of walk that fine line where Days Gone is considered. But again, you look at the numbers that Days Gone did. I think Sony's very much woke when it comes to that title right now. They're like, if we do return to this well, we're gonna be watching a little bit closer. So I think outside of Days Gone, I think Sony's been very careful about how they foster, their studios' output and content, and they're very careful with the type of quality, almost in that weird Nintendo level.
Yeah.
So that's why what we were talking about earlier with The Last of Us, it's like, yeah, they could have probably gotten that ready for 2019. They're like, why would we? We'll take our time because we know when that game drops, we want it to be everything people are expecting from it. You know, so
Absolutely.
I can imagine giving Remedy that kind of like nurturing, that kind of time, that kind of like the budget they would want to really create. It could be an interesting thing.
For sure. Jared.
All right. Well, this one's probably a little bit out there, but it kind of makes some sense to me. My thinking, or what I think would be a good fit for Sony, would be to acquire Blue Point Studios and put them in charge of remastering or remaking a lot of their original hit titles for PlayStation and just putting them into the modern era and just getting people to relive them again. Like Shadow of the Colossus, they were able to sell that damn game 3 separate times. Obviously, if there's a hit classic back in the day and ends up being a modern remake, people are gonna just absolutely eat it up. Like, let's say a modern remake of Twisted Metal. How awesome would that be? Of the original Metal Gear Solid. That'd be pretty freaking awesome too. So I think something like that, if they were to acquire them, give them the funding, give them the backing, allow the studio to grow, put them in charge of maybe doing 1 or 2 remakes every couple of years, sort of thing. They could be a phenomenal hit for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Blue Point is, that was actually the one I was going to use, if I'm being totally honest. They did a great job on the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection. They did Shadow of the Colossus insanely well. They're the people that did the Metal Gear Solid HD collection in 2011. So yeah, they've done a ton of stuff. They're independent studio. They're smaller. Makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm going to throw one out there, and I've got a super easy one and one that I think that should happen. And I'm going to do the really slam dunk easy one first off is going to be Kojima Productions. For the simple reason is that I think if they don't lock him down before he hits super success, if Death Stranding blows the hell up as like a 10 million copy selling game, I don't think you'll see Kojima have an interest in signing on with them exclusively. And I think that losing Kojima as a first-party developer would be a big loss.
He could become his own first-party developer, honestly, at this rate.
Well,
it's a huge fan base, and let's be honest, if he's really good at what he does, and if Death Stranding really is as good as it is, I mean, the talent's there. He's obviously doing something right from leaving Konami, so it would be really smart for someone to pick him up as soon as they could, especially if Death Stranding gets, popular exactly like what you're saying, Nick.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, too, is like when you could sit down and be like, yeah, we've got Neil Druckmann, Cory Barlog, and Hideo Kojima, and the list goes on and on and on. It's a certain pedigree, and I think that Kojima falls very much in line with the PlayStation first-party pedigree, so to speak. But I don't think he'll be willing to jump in. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure Sony has the money and wants to do it, but I'm not sure how willing Kojima is to jump into a deal after how badly he was
with Konami.
With how badly Konami rolled him around. So I'm not sure how his feeling about getting into big corporate would be again.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
if anybody was to do it, it would be them, because I know they do have a good relationship.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is like if Kojima Productions is going to get purchased by anyone, it will be Sony, or they will stay independent.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Like if they're gonna court, now's the time.
Yeah, because I mean, if Death Stranding is a big hit and then he has something after that, at that point, Jared's right. He becomes self-sufficient. He'll do well just off of his name, and you don't need it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
whereas Sony right now can pitch, we've been here since day one with you, blah, 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 blah. We're here for you from launch onward. It's a really easy sales pitch at this point.
Yep.
Well, I'm not going to say really easy sales pitch. Because
it's easier than it's about to be.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I'm at. So we'll circle our way all the way back around to Sam. And who is your second pick?
It was going to be Blue Point. Then then Jared stole that. So I'll just note that I agree with him. And so as a result, I'll be honest, I've kind of had to take a step back and think, okay, who else makes sense? Who else is going to be a good fit? So someone else is actually free to go instead of me right now.
Eric?
Yeah, I'll go. I'm going to throw one out. Airship Syndicate.
Okay, good. See, that's the kind of thing I like. A name that not a lot of people are going to know. Dive in on that, please.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I'm a Joey Madureira stan. Like, I'm just, I've been a fan of his since the comic stuff. Now, conversely, I have not had a chance to jump into the Battle Chasers game, which is, for me, being a stan of his, I just haven't had a chance or had the time to do so. Sure. And I had that definitely on my playlist very soon here. But yeah, I don't know what their next major thing is going to be, but I could definitely see if they could get picked up by somebody like Sony and get some cash and influx into their studio. What could they really come up with? Because those who have played Battle Chaser say it is a very capable RPG, turn-based RPG, and I think a studio like that lends itself to that diversity that they could need for those, quirky, smaller titles, that spark imagination. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. They're the ones who made the upcoming Darksiders Genesis, right?
Yes.
That's very different. Very different. And
it looks very cool. Yeah, he's very tied into like the whole Darksiders, world, with his character designs and things like that. Yeah. But yeah, they have that Darksiders Genesis coming up at some point.
Cool.
But I would be talking to them and saying, hey, what other ideas do you guys have? Because they're, I think they're very capable.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Jared, your last one.
All right. I don't know how to approach this one because I know this is really another far out there. You guys know how I think. I like to put my tinfoil hat on. And
it's fine.
Completely far out there. But ever since I was a kid and looking at the PlayStation brand, I've always felt this one set of studios has always been a part of PlayStation, but they never really have. But their relationship has always been so strong. And that's Square Enix.
You're crazy.
I told you.
Hey, go big or go home.
I told you. But I don't know. Honestly, it's just one of those studios and publishers where with PlayStation, they've always had that really strong bond and relationship. And if they were really to go big, to me, it just kind of makes sense. Like, hey, you know what? Let's just snag up Square Enix and kind of everything they got. Sure, let's keep some of the titles multi-platform to keep the funds going, but then they can really double down on certain titles on there to make it really good exclusive titles. But that's just kind of like me, So I told you guys, really far out there, but that's what I got.
Square Enix, get bought by Sony. Remake Radiata Stories, you cowards.
How do I put this? How do I put this politely, Jared?
Oh boy.
How do I put this? Square Enix net revenue, I'll put it this way, is comparable to Sony's. It's not as high, but it's comparable. That's actually more ridiculous than that stupid rumor that was going around about Sony buying Take-Two. Sorry.
Oh my God.
I am going to burst your bubble right here. I got my pen sharp.
I told you. I was like, no, it's
but not as crazy as them buying Rockstar.
Oh my.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like that one, Eric, that one sounds crazier, but when you think of net worth, it's actually about the same in terms of insanity. Like, no, not happening.
Pretty nuts, eh?
I'm not gonna lie.
I appreciate it though, man.
I ain't gonna lie.
Like,
longest time, why was more casual? I thought Square Enix was a first-party Sony studio because 98% of their games didn't go to any other platform.
Right.
So, it's fair. But Square Enix treated IO Interactive like crap, so get tossed. Won't remake Radiata Stories, but we'll give frickin' Final Fantasy 14 frickin' updates. Okay. Whatever. Not my JRPG. So, Sam, do you have your final pick?
Yeah, actually, I do. This is a little far out there, but because they might want to be independent because they're a smaller team, but it's not something I think a lot of people bring up. Playdead,
Mm.
Oh yeah.
Limbo,
Yeah.
Inside,
Yep.
very unique, very weird tone
Yep.
games. I like their stuff. I absolutely like
I
their
do
stuff.
too.
And if we want to get, I know that. See, the reason this is weird is they've usually been had more traditional relationship with Microsoft, because both games came to Microsoft platforms first, if I remember correctly. They're working on their third game now. But if we want to get weird here, that's diversity for you. That
Yeah.
kind of strange, like no one else is really doing games like Playdead.
That's true.
And I'm definitely interested in whatever their next game is. Rumor is, from the concept art and whatnot, that it's going to be sci-fi related. So I'm excited.
Hey,
But
any
yeah.
company that's like still gonna put out an inside collector's edition that costs some ridiculous hundreds of dollars, made by the people that make real dolls, get them, sign them. They're quirky. Those guys are fun.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they do weird stuff. No one else is going to do the kind of stuff that they're going to do. And so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what? Why not? Go for that kind of thing. That's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna close off with two picks that I think are pretty obvious. I'm actually surprised no one else snagged them. The first one is gonna be 4A Games. Everyone's been chomping at the bit for Microsoft to buy them, but I think Sony's just as viable to buy them because as it's quite clearly been stated on this podcast, Sony has a plethora of third-person focused story games. But I think if there's anyone that's doing FPS games, story-driven FPS games in an insane way that isn't ID Software, it's definitely 4A Games.
That's true. That's true.
And if they were given a huge operating budget, woo, I think they could go crazy. And the other one is the fact that the Order 1886 could easily become Gears of War on PlayStation if they just give Ready at Dawn the money.
That was gonna be one of mine also.
Because, tell me when you're playing the Order 1886, you're not sitting there going, if you just copy and pasted this gameplay into, Gears of War style multiplayer modes, this would be amazing.
Well, see, that's the funny thing. That's why I kind of laugh when I know, the console wars just make people say crazy shit. But I'm just like, when I would see kind of like Xbox guys say, well, the Order 1886 is just complete whack gameplay. And I'm like, guys, it's not that far off from Gears. So what are we talking about
It's
here?
true. It's true.
Let's stop it. So, but yeah, I'm with you on that, Nick. But
It's I don't know. I just sit there and I'm like, it's a third-person game, yeah, but while I was playing the single player, I was like, there's so much multiplayer potential for this.
Yeah.
And I really
those crazy weapons and stuff, man. You could have done some crazy, crazy stuff.
The Order 1886 may go down as the most wasted potential in IP this generation.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
But what about Super Lucky's Tale?
Oh, that's about to get the bomb game on Switch, man.
Oh my god.
You know what? Though? You laugh. I bet it's going to sell well for some.
No, I'm not. That's not laughing at all, Sam.
It will.
I'm laughing ironically because I think that game's going to be gangbusters.
Where were you before? It's been around.
Right.
I bought it. I played it.
I'm looking at that and I'm looking at what they're doing to it. I'm like, they completely know the audience that they're dealing with. And I guarantee that game is probably, I won't say guaranteed, but I bet that game is going to do well because they are really putting a lot into it.
Yeah.
You know what?
I think a part of that too is that Nintendo thing. They're like, if you're going to bring it here, you got to do some things to it. I don't think Cuphead needed more. Cuphead is what it is, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And Nintendo's like, oh yeah, same with Ori. It's like,
Ori's
you guys
fine.
are
Don't touch it.
You are ready. I think Nintendo's like, you're almost there. Let's just do this, and this. And what I've seen of it, I'm like, man, they really are putting some heart into it.
Yeah, it's a good platformer though. I played it from start to finish. I've beaten it, and it's actually a really good platformer. So seeing it go to Switch, I think it's perfect. Nintendo fans are going to eat it up.
One thing that jumped out to me, with that, Jared, was the one thing that they've been highlighting is saying they fixed the camera.
Yeah.
They really put work to the camera, and I think that was probably one of the things that probably turned people off on really diving into it on in the Xbox version. Because I know that's one of the things that kind of got on my nerve. I'm like, this camera keeps fighting me.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoyed it. And it made me really want a banjo game even more. Because I was like, this is really good and this is really charming. And I hate this whole thing that's developed in social media gaming where, oh, you don't want those games. Those are kiddie games. Fuck you. I want to play Banjo-Kazooie.
No, people say that, man, but people can kind of go to hell. Play some of those Rainbow Road levels on Wii U of Super Mario 3D World.
Oh my god.
And you tell me that this is kiddie. My
Go
daughter
run
goes
around in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Let me know how it works out for you.
kiddie. Like, come on, man.
It's just crazy. I mean, like people will be like, people will be like, oh, after Ghost of Tsushima, I can't wait to see what Sucker Punch does next. I'm like, love a Sly Cooper game, and everyone's like, get fucked, nerd. And I'm just like, oh, okay.
No. Hey, can I throw one out there and see what you guys think?
Sure. Go ahead. Why not?
Starbreeze Studios.
They better act fast.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. that was going to be my other part of that saying was like, go now. Because you might get a good deal.
You might get a good deal. That's one of those things where, like, I hear you, like I know what you're going for, but at the same time, you better act quick because. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but like their net income is literally in the negative for 2018. It's like a loss of $14.4 million, something like that. I think might even be a little higher or lower than that. Overkill's The Walking Dead bombed beyond bomb to the point that console versions were canceled. It's like it's the whole raid from authorities, like. But I hear what you're saying in terms of, again, that multiplayer diversity, that talent that was there for Payday, and I think they helped with A Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Yes, like they supported because Joseph Ferris didn't have Hazelight at the time. He was the director of that game, but Starbreeze are the ones who actually made it. Right. So
and a really good game.
Yeah, really good game. Like there is talent there. They've just had a really sucky shake over the last couple of years. So I hear what you're saying. I'm actually with you 100%. But act now.
Yeah. But it's in the world of the last year where, studios have been saved from the brink. Yep. That sounds like a studio that could be saved from the brink by either Microsoft or even Sony,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the best kind of acquisition, quite frankly, is the ones where it's like, okay, this is really necessary. I think very much like a Double Fine situation where, like, let's be real, Double Fine has a lot of community love. They've had some rough years over the last little bit,
and,
so it's
and
good
I'm
to
happy.
See them okay,
and I'm happy that that Microsoft got them. But man, I saw that and I was like, man, Sony, what were you doing there?
Kind of a Ninja Theory thing as well. Like
same
with them, where it's like they were trying to get cozy with you for a couple of years there.
You had an apartment together.
Yeah.
It's like.
But yeah, no. I'm ashamed I didn't think of it, Eric. Very good call on Starbreeze. Now that I'm actually starting to think about it, like there's some good, unique multiplayer experience.
Yeah.
I will say my heart goes out to Starbreeze because I've got probably about 600 hours logged into Payday 2. Absolutely fantastic game. My heart goes out to them with the Overkill The Walking Dead, however, because they're probably one of the only developers in the history that had to pull their game off the market because the IP was pulled out from under them.
Yeah.
People that aren't aware, Skybound Games basically looked at the game and went, yeah, this doesn't represent the Walking Dead brand. Pull it off the shelves. We're not selling it. Which is basically a death sentence for any game. Starbreeze Studios, as it sits right now, their net income is negative 1.3 million. And their revenue is negative 1.383 million. And their operating income is negative 1.57 million. So they're essentially just hemorrhaging money. Their stock is currently worth $1.35.
I'm not going to make the obvious joke. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to.
What?
I'd buy that for $1.
Except you'd still lose money.
Wow.
I'd buy that for
$1.
what's sad is you could probably pay more for Payday 2 on the Steam sale than you do for the stock prices for the company that made it. That's rough.
Wow.
So that's all our discussion topics for tonight. So I want to thank everyone for stopping in and giving us a listen on this will be going live Wednesday morning. So hope we gave you guys something great to listen to on your Wednesday morning drive. So we will do outros here. Sam, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Samuel Tolbert. That's Tolbert.
Right
on. And Jared?
Well, you can also find me on Twitter at RageVirus_X and at TickGamesNetwork.com.
Right on. And Eric?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ECJackson with an X and on Wednesday nights on Brat Podcast.
Right on. And I'm Nicholas Downey, review and preview editor for the Inner Circle Games Network. You can find any of my nonsense on www.tickgamesnetwork.com. Remember, I'm your favorite PC, Xbox, and Nintendo fanboy, depending on which one of my articles you read. And you can find me on all my social medias at Undead3XVI. Thank you for tuning into episode 4 of the Gaming Perspective podcast. And I will be seeing you guys on a special episode on Friday for the PlayStation Perspective. We're going to talk PS5 news and rumors and their thoughts on indie games, and we're going to dive into financials a bit, and of course we're going to touch on all the studio rumors and acquisition fun more in depth than we got on this episode. So hope you guys will tune in for that. That'll be going up on Friday night. I might do that live, have a couple of drinks, do a live stream, have some fun. We will see. So thank you guys for tuning in the Gaming Perspective podcast. We will see you guys next week when we go live Monday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much.